There is a fantasy that lives in the dark corners of the human mind. It is the fantasy of the last straw. We all face petty injustices. We all deal with corrupt bureaucrats, rude neighbors, and unfair fines. We grit our teeth. We pay the money. We move on. But we all wonder, what would happen if we didn't? What would happen if, instead of bending the knee, we pushed back? What if we used our skills, our patience, and our rage to build something that the world couldn't ignore? June 4, 2004, Granby, Colorado. It is a quiet Friday afternoon in a small mountain town. Suddenly, a wall explodes. The side of a metal muffler shop bursts open in a cloud of dust and debris. Out of the shadows emerges a monster. It is a bulldozer, but it doesn't look like a construction vehicle anymore. It looks like a tank from a dystopian future. It is encased in improvised armor, steel plates sandwiched with concrete. That is over a foot thick. It has no windows. It has no doors. It is driven by video cameras, hidden behind bulletproof plastic. And it is unstoppable. The police arrive. They fire their handguns. Ping, ping. The bullets bounce off the hull like rain. They fire their shotguns. Nothing. They call in the SWAT team. They fire high-powered rifles. They throw flashbang grenades down the exhaust pipe. The machine keeps coming. It isn't attacking people. It is attacking buildings. It is crushing the concrete plant. It is flattening the town hall. It is erasing the newspaper office. The driver inside has a list. He has a map, and he has sealed himself inside the cockpit with a crane, ensuring that he will never walk out of that machine alive. He is on a mission of total, scorched earth vengeance. This is the story of the Killdozer. It is the story of Marvin Heemeyer. To some, he is a domestic terrorist who terrorized a town. To others, he is a folk hero, the ultimate symbol of the little guy fighting back against the system. But the truth is much more complicated. It is a story of a brilliant engineer who let his grievances fester until they became a concrete coffin. If you are fascinated by the snapping point of the human psyche and the terrifying power of engineering used for revenge, please hit that subscribe * button right now. You need to hear this story because it forces us to ask, how far would you go if you felt the whole world was against you? To understand the Rampage, we have to understand the man. Marvin Heemeyer was not a violent criminal. He was a 52-year-old welder. He owned a muffler shop in Granby, Colorado. He was known as a talented craftsman. He could fix anything. He was hardworking. He was religious. But he was also stubborn. Marvin moved to Granby in the early 90s. He bought 2 acres of land for $42,000. He built his muffler shop. He made a living. But Granby was a good old boys' town. The local government, the wealthy families, and the business owners were a tight-knit clique. Marvin was an outsider. And outsiders in Granby had to play by the rules. Marvin didn't like rules. The trouble started with a zoning dispute. A local family, the Dashevs, wanted to build a concrete batch plant. They wanted to build it right next to Marvin's muffler shop. Marvin objected. He said the dust, the noise, and the trucks would ruin his business. He fought them in town hall meetings. He fought them in court. But the Dashevs were connected. The town council approved the concrete plant. Marvin was furious. He tried to compromise. He offered to swap land. But the deals fell through. Marvin claimed they were lowballing him. They claimed he was greedy. The concrete plant was built. And then the town started to squeeze him. The town council fined Marvin $2,500 for having junk cars on his property. They fined him for not being hooked up to the sewage line. This was the breaking point. The sewage line was the ultimate catch-22. To hook up to the sewer, Marvin needed to dig a trench. But the only way to dig the trench was to cross the land owned by the concrete plant. The concrete plant owners refused to give him an easement. So the town fined him for not having a sewer, while the neighbors prevented him from building the sewer. Marvin felt trapped. He felt bullied. He bought a cement mixer truck to clean up his property. He tried to comply. But then he realized something. They didn't want him to comply. They wanted him gone. They wanted to bankrupt him, take his land, and drive him out of town. In 2002, Marvin's father died. Marvin went to the funeral. When he came back, something had changed in his eyes. He stopped fighting the lawsuits. He paid the fines. He put his for sale sign up. He sold the muffler business to a trash company. But he kept one thing. He kept a large metal shed on the back of the property. He told the new owners he needed time to clear out his equipment. He asked for a 6-month lease on that shed. They agreed. Marvin disappeared into that shed. He wasn't clearing out equipment. He was building his masterpiece. Marvin later recorded audio tapes explaining his mindset. In these tapes he sounds calm, lucid, but messianic. He believed God was guiding him. God blessed me in advance for the task that I am about to undertake. It is my duty. God has asked me to do this. He said he was willing to sacrifice his life to expose the corruption of Granby. He believed that reasonable men must do unreasonable things. Marvin had bought a bulldozer years earlier, a Komatsu D355A. It is a massive machine. It weighs 49 tons. It is designed to move mountains. Marvin drove it into the shed. And then he began the modification. For 18 months, Marvin worked in secret. He didn't just bolt some metal to the side. He engineered a composite armor system. He took 2 sheets of half-inch steel. Between them, he poured 6 inches of concrete. This sandwich armor was incredibly heavy and incredibly strong. It was resistant to small arms fire, explosives, and even armor-piercing rounds. He covered the cabin, he covered the engine, he covered the tracks. He turned the bulldozer into a moving bunker. Marvin knew that once he started, he would be blind. If he covered the windows with concrete, how would he see? He installed video cameras on the outside of the tank. He wired them to monitors inside the cockpit. But cameras are fragile. So he encased the cameras in 3-inch thick bulletproof plastic housings. He installed compressed air nozzles aimed at the lenses to blow away dust and debris. He thought of everything. He installed fans for cooling. He stocked the cabin with water, food, and Gatorade. He brought 3 guns, a .50 caliber Barrett sniper rifle, a .223 semi-automatic, and a .308 rifle. He mounted them in firing ports, small holes in the armor. And finally, the most chilling detail. Marvin knew he wasn't coming back. The armor was so heavy, the finished machine weighed 61 tons, that it couldn't be lifted by hand. Once the hull was lowered over the chassis, there was no door. Marvin used a homemade crane in the shed to lift the armor shell. He drove the dozer underneath it. He climbed in, and he lowered the concrete shell onto the machine. He sealed himself inside his own tomb. Friday, June 4, 2004, 2:00 p.m. Marvin revved the engine. The massive diesel motor roared to life. He put it in gear. He drove forward. He didn't open the shed door. He drove through the wall. The beast emerged into the sunlight. His first target was right next door. The Mountain Park concrete plant, the source of his misery. The workers at the plant saw the machine coming. They were confused. Who was driving that? Then Marvin dropped the blade. He drove straight into the administration building. Crunch! The building folded like cardboard. The roof collapsed. Marvin reversed. He turned. He crushed the mixing equipment. He crushed the trucks. In 10 minutes, he completely erased the business that had fought him for years. Cody Dashev, one of the owners, tried to stop him. He drove a front-end loader at the Killdozer. It was like a mosquito attacking an elephant. Marvin just pushed the loader aside. Dashev fired a gun at the tank. The bullets sparked off the armor. Marvin didn't even flinch. The 911 calls flooded in. There is a tank destroying the concrete plant. Sheriff's deputies arrived. Under-Sheriff Glenn Traynor climbed onto the moving bulldozer. Imagine the bravery. A 60-ton machine is crushing buildings, and this cop climbs on top of it. He tried to find a way in. He fired his service pistol into the exhaust stack. He fired into the cameras. But the plastic was too thick. Marvin kept driving. Traynor had to jump off before he was crushed by falling debris. The police realized they were powerless. "We need something bigger," they said. They called for a SWAT team. They called the Colorado State Patrol. Governor Bill Owens was notified. They seriously considered calling in the National Guard to use an ** Apache, attack helicopter ** to fire a Hellfire missile at the dozer. They decided against it because of the risk of collateral damage in the town. Marvin was invincible. Marvin left the concrete plant. He drove onto the highway. Cars pulled over terrified. Marvin wasn't hitting cars. He wasn't hitting pedestrians. He had a list. He drove to the * town hall, **. He plowed into the front door. He took out the wall. He destroyed the office of the town trustees who had fined him. He drove to the ** newspaper office, the * Sky High News *. The newspaper had written editorials calling him crazy. Marvin drove through the front window and exited through the back wall. The building was totaled. He drove to the * home of the former mayor *, who had died years ago. Marvin crushed the house anyway. The widow was not home. He was methodical. He was driving slow, about 5 miles per hour. But he was relentless. He severed a gas line. Gas began to leak into the town. Police evacuated the area. Granby was a war zone. Smoke, dust, leaking gas, and the roar of the diesel engine. There is a debate about Marvin's intent. His supporters say he didn't want to hurt anyone. He avoided hitting people. But the police tell a different story. They say he fired his rifles at propane tanks, trying to cause an explosion. They say he fired at power transformers. And at one point, he flattened the town library. A children's reading group was in the library just minutes before. They evacuated just in time. If Marvin had arrived 5 minutes earlier, or if he had knocked down the wrong wall, he could have killed dozens of children. Was he careful, or was he just lucky that no one died? After an hour and a half of destruction, Marvin headed for his final target, Gamble's hardware store. The owner of this store had been on the town council. Marvin drove the Killdozer into the store. But Gamble's had a basement, and the floor was heavy with stock. As Marvin drove in, the floor collapsed. The Killdozer sank. The engine struggled. The tracks spun. But the machine was high-centered. The heavy armor that protected him was now his anchor. He was stuck. Smoke began to pour from the radiator. The engine was overheating. A hydraulic hose burst. The beast was dying. The SWAT team surrounded the store. They climbed onto the roof of the dozer. They waited. They heard a muffled sound from inside the concrete shell. Bang! A single gunshot. Then silence. The machine stopped vibrating. It took the police **12 hours to get into the Killdozer. They had to bring in specialized cutting torches, oxyacetylene. They cut through the steel. Then they hit the concrete. They had to use jackhammers. They chipped away layer by layer. Finally, the next morning, they cut a hole large enough to see inside. They found Marvin Heemeyer dead in the driver's seat. He had shot himself with his .357 handgun. He had planned this perfectly. He had destroyed 13 buildings. He had caused $7 million in damage. And he had not killed a single person other than himself. The aftermath of the Granby Rampage left the nation divided. To the people of Granby, Marvin was a terrorist. They saw him as an angry, unstable man who endangered their lives because he didn't get his way in a zoning dispute. They pointed out that he fired guns at police and propane tanks. They called him a coward for killing himself. But the internet saw something else. Online, Marvin became a legend. Killdozer became a meme. He became the patron saint of the downtrodden. People saw him as a man pushed too far, a man who used his hands and his brain to fight back against a corrupt system. They quoted his tapes. "I was always willing to be reasonable until I had to be unreasonable." They ignored the near misses with the children and focused on the destruction of the town hall. The Killdozer story is a unique documentary because it is a Rorschach test. What you see in Marvin Heemeyer depends on how you view authority. Do you see a madman? Or do you see a man who simply had enough? It is also a marvel of engineering. The fact that one man, working alone in a shed, could build a vehicle that defeated the entire police force of a county is terrifyingly impressive. It shows that the only thing stopping a skilled engineer from causing chaos is their own restraint. And once that restraint is gone, concrete and steel are harder than laws. Granby rebuilt, the concrete plant was repaired. The Killdozer itself was dismantled. The town officials were so afraid of it becoming a shrine that they broke it down into individual pieces of scrap metal. They mixed the scrap with other scrap, so nobody could claim a piece of the holy relic. They scattered Marvin's creation to the winds. But they couldn't destroy the story. The legend of the man who sealed himself in concrete to settle a score will live forever. This story is incredibly complex. I find myself torn between admiring his skill and being horrified by his recklessness. Do you consider Marvin Heemeyer a folk hero or a domestic terrorist? Let's argue it out in the comments below. If you are fascinated by stories of mechanical mayhem and the breaking point of the human mind, please hit that asterisk like asterisk asterisk button. And subscribe asterisk asterisk. I have a story coming next week about a commercial pilot who was sucked out of his cockpit window at 17,000 feet and survived because the flight attendant held onto his ankles for 20 minutes. Stay safe, keep your temper in check, and be nice to your welder.